In ruling on the constitutionality of requiring most Americans to obtain health insurance, the Supreme Court faces a central test: whether it will recognize limits on its own authority to overturn well-founded acts of Congress. The skepticism in the questions from the conservative justices suggests that they have adopted the language and approach of the insurance mandate's challengers. But the arguments against the mandate, the core of the health care reform law, willfully reject both the reality of the national health care market and established constitutional principles that have been upheld for generations. The Obama administration persuasively argues that the mandate is central to solving the crisis in America's health care system, which leaves 50 million people uninsured and accounts for 17.6% of the national economy. The challengers contend that the law is an unlimited and therefore unconstitutional use of federal authority to force individuals to buy insurance or pay a penalty. That view wrongly frames the mechanism created by this law. The insurance mandate is nothing like requiring people to buy broccoli, a comparison Justice Antonin Scalia suggested in his exasperated questioning of Solicitor General Donald Verrilli, Jr. Congress has no interest in requiring broccoli purchases because the failure to buy broccoli does not push that cost onto others in the system. Congress has indisputable authority to regulate national markets and provide for the general welfare through its broad power to tax. Nothing about the mandate falls outside those clearly delineated powers. In fact, Justice Scalia has in the recent past declared Congress's broad authority under the Commerce Clause to regulate activities with far less direct economic impact in a 2005 case upholding a federal law prohibiting the growing of medical marijuana for personal use. He wrote that Congress may regulate even intra-state activities that do not themselves substantially affect interstate commerce. The skepticism of Chief Justice John Roberts, Jr. and Justices Scalia and Samuel Alito, Jr. was also troubling because it seemed to accept an odd distinction of timing made by the opponents of the law. Those critics concede that the mandate would be constitutional if it went into effect at the moment an individual actually needed health care. In other words, Congress could require the sick and dying to pay the insurance or for medical services when they show up in the emergency room, but it cannot require pre-coverage of medical costs through insurance. The court has no authority under the Constitution to judge the merits or effectiveness of the health care law. That is Congress's job. Yet, as Justice Stephen Breyer remarked about the points made by a lawyer for the opponents, all that sounds like you're debating the merits of the bill. To counter the challengers' claims of alarm over a novel policy, he offered several examples in American history where the court has strongly backed new solutions to major problems like the creation of a national bank in the early 19th century. If the Supreme Court hews to established law, the only question it must answer in this case is modest. Did Congress have a rational basis for consolidating and concluding that the economic effects of a broken health care system warranted a national solution? The answer is incontrovertibly yes. Israel's Supreme Court made an important contribution to justice and kept alive hope from a two-state solution with the Palestinians when it ruled this week that Migron, an illegal outpost built by Israeli settlers, must be dismantled by August 1st. Now it is up to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to comply promptly while making clear to the settlers that violent resistance will not be tolerated. The outpost which houses 50 families, was started a decade ago in the West Bank, near the city of Ramallah. It is among the largest of dozens of enclaves that, unlike the 120 full-blown settlements in the West Bank, even the Israeli government considers illegal because they were constructed without authorization. Yet the government has abetted their expansion rather than dismantling them, as Israel long ago promised the United States in preparation for a two-state solution. The case was brought by Palestinians represented by an Israeli lawyer and Peace Now, a group that opposes settlements as an obstacle to peace. Last August, the Supreme Court ruled that Migron was built on private Palestinian land and ordered the outpost dismantled by the end of March. The justices said there was no justification for preserving the illegal situation and continued violation of Palestinian property rights. $125. How was it?